Hello everybody and welcome back. That's right, I have the new female and male armor patterns available in my shop. Go ahead and download them. We're going to build them today. The first one we're going to start with is the female armor pattern. So if you guys are ready, let's get started. Here is all the female parts. They're all cut out and ready to go. I recommend on this particular armor you can use 6 to 8 millimeter foam, and this is what we have today. We're using 6 millimeter foam. Now this is the floor mat foam, which if you guys don't have to use it, I just got this because the reason I'm using this for the test is because I have some really good foam. I'm saving it for another project. So I'm just going to build it together as a test. What we're going to do now is we're going to work on the breastplates. We're going to heat curl these first before we start assembling. There's a lot of things we want to heat curl, but we're going to start with these first. So let's go ahead and move this away. My heat board. And what we're going to do, we're going to curl these guys. I have an acrylic dome. Now again, if you do not have an acrylic dome, that's okay. You could use a softball or something round or a toy ball, as long as it's rigid and plastic or firm, and a roll of tape just to stabilize it. And you just need something curved to push your foam into when it's heated up. The breastplates have been curled. Let's move on to, I have the abs here. I just want to have them slightly curled. I'm not going to, both these guys, I don't need to press them onto a dome. I'm just going to heat them up and just curl them slightly. So I'm going to do that really quick since the board's set up. Let's do that. Again, this doesn't be a lot, just a slight curl like that. All right, we have everything heat curled. Let's go to the don't need our heat board anymore. What we're going to do next is start assembling. So let's go ahead and start with the same parts we did in the beginning. Let's start with the breastplates first. So let's start by gluing these guys together. Apply a little glue to the edge. Oops, that's quite a bit. And I take a piece of scrap foam to smooth it out, just like that. All right, going to start with the top pieces here. Line them up. And again, when I stick things together, I always like to start with the top edge. And the reason being is that will keep your seams nice and even. Really focus on that top edge. That really does minimize the seams. It's just there. Keep everything lined up. Good contact. There. Okay, and now for the bottom half. And watch those registration marks. Very important. All right. Now the breastplates are put together. This is the first wave. So we're going to do these first. We'll put these aside. We're going to move on to gluing this together, but I always find I like to keep the center not glued together yet because that's pretty much how I pull everything together. So let's start with just doing the side pieces first. Line up. Now that we have these lower halves stuck together, we're going to focus and we're going to put a bevel on the bottom of the lip. For the bevel, from this edge, from this registration mark to this registration mark. Into the fifth one, this is where we're going to put our bevel. See? So, this whole edge here. And the trick is I'm going to gradually start from here and bevel down. And we're just going to grind out just a little bit. I'm going to do that with my rotary tool and my sanding drum. Now again, this is not necessary. This is something that you could put the armor all together and it still would work. But we just thought it'd be nice to put a little bit of a bevel and see if it caused a little bit more of a cut like a breast. All right, we have the glue applied to the top and bottom, dry. Now, let's start with the inside first. Get my registration marks. Line it up like this. Make sure we got contact on the edges here. Perfect. I always like to go back. You can see like these gaps. They happen quite frequently. When you're doing this, reach back behind there and just kind of pinch them shut. Again, this is the reason why I do have this as a separate piece, is because then once you glue this, you can roll this on very easily. Line it up. Oop, come on. I have the two front halves. You can see right here, done. Let's move on to the back. Now we're going to do the back plates, and we're going to glue the same thing. We're going to start with the shoulder blades to the actual centerpiece first. Got the back sealed up, looks great. Now, let's glue these two halves together. Start with the top edge. Again, I like just touching the top edges first. Gives you a little more control. All right. Again, flip it over. Make sure you make good contact. Let's move on to the breastplate in the front. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to glue these two together. There we go. Start from the top. Make contact. There we go. Got it. What I want to do is I want to take the heat gun. It's a little tricky because normally you like to let the contact adhesive dry for like 45 minutes. But a lot of this pushing and pulling and fighting with the foam is that once it's all glued together, let the glue cure a little bit and you go back in and reheat the foam, and it makes the foam relax and take the shape of the foam that you originally made. So the front and the back, and what I'm going to do is we're going to glue these guys together. Now, of course, on these patterns, I've made 3 different sizes, and sometimes you're making something you find it's a little snug or altering. It's close to fitting you, but not exactly fitting you. You can definitely add foam to the, adding more foam between the shoulders and the side pieces. Just cutting a strip of inch or half inch and adding onto it and just altering. Because when you get these patterns, it's hard because everybody's bodies are different. Alter it, change it, add to it. So right now I'm going to glue these guys together. And like, oh, a little off there, huh? Line up. There you go. Do some sanding on that. Good. All right. Well, there it is all together. This is the new female armor. Much better than my first one. I really like how it turned out. And there it was, the female armor pattern. Thank you, Sylvia Slays, for modeling that for us. Now, let's start on with the male armor. Okay, as you can see, I went ahead, again, to save time and cut all the male pattern parts out. But I want to focus on the, before we start heat forming and assembling, I want to go into some details about the abdominals. So, now what we have here is the abdominal pieces. Now this is, I got my my right and my lefts cut out. So, this is the left side. And we trace this, but all this stuff here, the detail and the abdominal stuff, has to be traced on the other side. So while you got this all cut out, I cut all these edges out at 90, perfect 90 degrees, which means if I flip it over, I can do the same thing, flip the pattern over, lay it flush. So now what we do is we're going to look at these lines on the back side. So we're going to do some scoring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace this line right here. These are the abdominals, and what we do is we're going to go back in with an X-Acto blade, cut these guys, but you've got to have this, we're going to do this all on the back side. Again, we're going to do this to the other side, same drill, flip it over. As you guys can see these lines, I'm going to connect them. All right, I'm just tracing these right now with the reflect. I'm telling you, I'm having a hard time seeing them, so I actually have this cool Sharpie paint pen I stole from my wife. Okay, much better. Okay, now for the center lines where the abdominals are, where these guys are meeting, I'm going to do a slight bevel. Follow the line. All right. Now I know what you're thinking. You're beveled. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to do a little heat form, and this, when you glue this together, it forces us, it makes a little bit of a crease. So we're going to go back and cut all this stuff from behind, but when I go to glue this, it gives that little defined abdominal crease in the front and kind of tucks in. Now we're going to go back in with an X-Acto blade When cutting foam, usually for experience, you kind of cut. You don't want to go beyond a certain point because you're cutting halfway into this foam, and it's a little tricky. So you only want to go so far. What I like to do sometimes, I usually either put a piece of tape on here, or we can take a Sharpie and mark the halfway point on your blade. Now I got a mark on my blade. I don't want to go any deeper than that. I'm not going to start out here. I'm going to start inside. I'm going to start right about here. And the reason I don't go all the way to the edge, just out of this fear of ripping or tearing when I'm heating it, so I want to keep that kind of somewhat intact. Okay, there they are. We got our abs. All the backs have been scored properly, and we are good to go. We're going to go ahead and set these aside, and let's start the assembly. We're going to start, much like we did with the female, we're going to start with the chest piece first. Got my heat board. So with this piece, we're going to heat up, and I'm going to focus on curling this part here and kind of bowing this out a little bit. I'm just going to take the foam and just kind of rock it out and kind of start to cause the chest curve, the pectoral muscles right here to get a little bit of a curl to them. Curl it. All these pieces again, we'll save the abdominals. These guys are the more complicated ones. We'll save these are the best for last. We'll put them over here. But for the additional parts, I like this is the lower part. All this stuff needs to be heat curled, but it doesn't need to be an evil foam anvil. It just needs a slight curl. So we're going to go ahead and do all that first. Now we have all the foam parts curled. We're going to move on to the most elaborate part is the abdominal. So we're going to go ahead, take these parts aside and move on to these guys. Heating this and pushing on it, I like to do a lot of this by hand. Now you can push in the foam anvil, but one of the problems is that sometimes when you're doing that, my fear of pushing too hard, it might pop through. So you definitely want to get a feel for it. So I'm going to get some gloves on. I have some rubber gloves I like to work with. Let me grab those. I like to get this foam nice and hot, so I want to burn my fingers so much. Now when heating, I like to do it from both sides. You want to just heat the shape up as fast as possible. I've always find it's good to do both sides. Just keep flipping it over. And then start shaping, bending like that. Now that we have both our abdominals done, before we go any further on this, I want to go ahead and seal these trenches. What we're going to do is we're going to fill these up with hot glue because I'm going to do some additional heating and curling and shaping to this, but I don't want to lose this that we did here. So to prevent these guys from going back into their shape, we're going to fill these trenches with hot glue. We're going to set these aside, let them cool, and let's move on to the chest piece. Again, I always like to glue the darts first. Line them up flush. Again, I always like touching the edge first. This really helps with your seams. And again, make sure you pull. Don't let that registration mark get away from you. Now let's move on to our abs. They look fantastic. Now, the next step we're going to do, we're going to glue like so. So we're going to do that next. Line it up, touch the edge, like that. Again, the gap in the back, push it together, make it stick. Ooh, look at these abs. All right, hold on. Now this is the back half. Gives you a little bit of a gap, so you line this mark up here first on this edge. We're going to start from the bottom. And again, I don't see my registration marks. So I just realized I cut them off when I cut the bevel, but I'm pretty confident I can line this up. It's coming together, line it up, line that chest up. Oh, this is awesome. Bam! There you go. Okay. So let me just make sure we get a good connection here. Now we're going to do the back half. Now we're doing the back. Let's start from the top, I think. Be the best way to go. We'll line up from here. Line up our marks, looking good. Bam! Look at that. Now see that nice curve? That's what I like. We're going to, the camera can only go back so far. This is so huge. We're going to connect the top, like so. I don't even know what size. Is this a medium or a large? I'm so tiny. But again, I always tell people if this costume comes close to fitting you, you can always add on the sides. If it's too much, you can add foam or take away foam. It's a great way to modify it from the sides. Wow, there it is. I don't think I can get this camera back any further. But there they are, the female and male armor patterns, both available in my shop. The male armor pattern was a little bit big on me. I guess if I had a little more time to adjust it, it could make it fit better. Sylvia Slays looked great in hers. While you're in my store, don't forget to click on my Amazon link. If you shop through my Amazon link, I get kickback from that, and it helps me with no extra cost to you. And that helps me keep making videos. So buy my patterns, shopping through my Amazon link helps me so much. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, and I'll catch you back next time right here on Evil Ted Live.